in order to get stuff done? Or, frankly, is it them who needs to be nicer to us? And here, to go toe-to-toe with this, is journalist and former MEP Patrick O'Flynn and the leader of the Rejoin the EU party, Richard Hewison. Richard, I'll start with you. Do we need to be... Good afternoon. Do we need to be nicer to the European Union?
Well, I think it'd be a good idea if everyone started being nicer to people in general. It shouldn't matter what our opinions are of people that are our allies, our friends, our trading partners and our neighbours. Ultimately, we should be looking at trying to forward the links that we have with our country in both trade, in both environment, in both science, in retirement projects. This is all things that we could do better. And quite frankly, taking a nicer tone, does it ever do anybody any harm?
No, it doesn't. It must come at great pains to you then, Richard, to look back and think at the way the EU treated Theresa May, the fact that Emmanuel Macron tried to nick millions of vaccines, he called Boris Johnson a knucklehead, and he's taken loads of our cash and done nothing about what's going on the Channel.
Oh, to be honest, Patrick, a lot of these ridiculous blown-up public rows are really meaningless. When we look at the substance of what's happened over the last few years, there's been a lot of spiteful rhetoric. I don't think any of our politicians actually really believe it, but it does have the effect of... what can I put it, energising the population in a negative direction. I don't believe that the EU really treated Theresa May badly. I don't believe that we treated the EU badly. I think it's all been public smoke and mirrors, and ultimately we should just sit down and get on with doing a better deal with the EU. Obviously, from my position, I think we're better off rejoining the EU, which is why I could not be more delighted that Liz Truss, or as Tim Farron from the Liberal Democrats now calls her, Agent Truss, has launched her anti-growth coalition. Because the best way to get growth is, of course, to rejoin the EU. That would give us an instant underlying 4% growth, boost to growth. So,
all right, you can come back. I'll let you come back with your manifesto pitch a little bit later on. I've got to get to Patrick O'Flynn. Patrick O'Flynn, of course, a former MEP. Do we need to be nicer to the EU?
Well, I think the first thing to say, by the way, is well done, Richard, for being a pro-EU membership politician with an honest name for his party, Rejoin EU. I mean, it might as well be what the Labour Party call themselves if they were actually honest with the public. So a point to him on that score. Do we need to be nicer? Well, as you have said, we saw Theresa May was nice to the point of... deference, wasn't she? And she got taunted, basically sand kicked in her face. Boris Johnson, with Dominic Cummings behind him, was a lot more tough. And, you know, whatever you think of the final Brexit deal he achieved, it was better than Theresa May's deal. And he achieved concessions. So I think it's about being hard-headed. I think there's a deal to be done here. Personally, I don't see a massive danger that this new European political community is an embryonic EU, although I do think Leave voters are entitled to be very sceptical of it. After all, Liz Truss thinks of herself as a great Brexiteer. She actually campaigned for Remain, and I remember debating against her in that referendum. So she's got to tread particularly carefully. My test is, what do we want from them? Well, what we want from France is one simple thing, which is an acceptance by France that they will take back migrants that we pick up in the Channel. If they agreed that, they could cut all their police spending trying to stop the boats embarking. We would do all the rounding up. They would take them back, and that would knock it stone dead. So if he's willing to offer that, then fair enough. That's good faith.
I mean, is that fair enough, Richard? Is that a fair enough starting point that we are holding up our end of the bargain? We're lobbing millions of quid at the French to try and stop what's going on in the Channel. Is it only fair that they do more to take some of those people back, Richard?
No, I'm sorry. I think this is very much a micro focus we're taking here. We can't just deal on this on a Britain versus France issue. And this is why I genuinely wish well for this club of nations, because we have to deal with the issue of desperate fleeing refugees coming from environmental crises and political crises in the direction of Europe. And we have to have a Europe-wide policy on that. And when I say that, I don't mean EU-wide, I mean Europe-wide.
What about economic migrants?
What about economic migrants? Well, how do we know people are economic migrants? Most of the people I see fleeing from war, fleeing from terror, fleeing from environmental disasters such as the droughts in Africa, these are people who are desperate for their lives.
But you've just made the point. Just quickly, because I will let you finish. No, I will let you finish. I will let you finish, absolutely. But I just want to make a point there. Just because I'm a bit tired of people saying this. Yes, you're absolutely right. If people are fleeing war or an environmental disaster or whatever the other example was you gave there, then yes, they are refugees. But my point is that's not an economic migrant. That's a different person, isn't it? But carry on, Richard.
Well, yes, but we're talking about people coming over in boats. And you're suggesting, with respect, that some of those people, at least, are economic migrants.
Yes, absolutely.
I would say the vast majority are people fleeing terror, fleeing torture, fleeing the potential for slavery, fleeing the potential for being executed because of their sexuality. These are people that should be welcomed into the European family, and we should do the best to try and get those people to have a future. Now, how we, for want of a better word, divvy people up between the European nations, this is what I'd like to see the Club of Nations deal with. But let's be clear, if we are sending people straight to camps like Rwanda, we are not going to be differentiating between the victims of rape and the economic migrants. And I don't think it's worth the risk of re-traumatizing some of these desperate individuals by sending them to a camp in Rwanda. It's despicable.